So, my name's Tim, grateful member of Al-Anon. Nice to see a full room. Doesn't take that for granted in Al-Anon. What I started thinking about during those readings was how divorced from reality I was when I arrived in Al-Anon, and the events and situations I found myself in before Al-Anon which did the divorcing. And several things occurred to me. I'll start with a couple of recent things. I was talking earlier this morning to a self-professed addict on the phone, and we were having a nice little conversation, and this person was presenting the view that although they were taking a substance, it wasn't affecting them. Now, if it's not affecting you, if it does nothing to your mind, why are you taking it? Because its purpose is to affect the mind. If it is affecting the mind, it's affecting the mind. You can't have your cake and eat it. And it's absolutely typical of the logical incoherence that I was faced with on a regular basis when I was growing up. You're asked to believe opposite or opposing ideas at the same time. No wonder I lost touch with reality. And my ability to lose touch with reality is apparently undimmed. I walked into the Sainsbury's and I said, I should know better than this now. I glanced. I thought, what harm could a glance do? It's exactly what alcoholics say with alcohol. What harm could a glance do at the newspaper headlines? And I will take the headline and take it to be a representation of reality. And of course it's not. The headline seeks to get me to buy the newspaper. It's not meant to be a representation of reality. It's trying to get me to do something. And with the alcoholics and addicts I've known, I get a lot of headlines coming my way which are there to get me to do a job for them. They're not meant to represent reality, but I would take them to be reality. I remember one of them. I don't have any live ones at the moment, as in drinking ones. There are some who are, in air quotes, in recovery, whatever that means. Sometimes they're easier when they're drinking, and they're easier when they've never been in recovery. At least it's a straightforward situation in some ways, and at least they're passed out for some of the day. Now they're kind of awake and buzzing, with those energy drinks, and very difficult to handle. I had a live one a few years ago who's in recovery for a long time, started drinking again, someone I was very close to. And the phrase was, I'm just drinking 1 or 2 beers, just 1 or 2 beers. And my other half and I spent some time with him. And then we saw the beers, those 20-ounce cans of 13% alcohol. That was a beer. That's not a beer. That's several beers in one can. That doesn't make it a beer. It's several beers, frankly. And it was so funny. Over the course of one conversation, he went from saying, I'm just having like 1 or 2 beers, and then a few minutes later, it's just 2 or 3 beers. And then by the end of the conversation, it's just 5 or 6 beers. He hadn't realised that the number was changing all through the conversation. Divorced from reality. I grew up in a household where when someone died of alcoholism, you never said something like, he died of alcoholism. No one mentioned the A word. There's the long A word, alcoholism, and there's the short A word, alcohol. Neither were mentioned. He had a nervous breakdown, it was said, or he had a heart attack. That means he hanged himself. That's what it meant. no truth. But of course one does know what is going on. So I've always known when they relapse, I know they've relapsed, even though everyone's denying it, because you see all of the signs round about, all of the other behaviours round about the drinking and the using. It's like you can smell the smoke, but you can't see the fire. And it drove me nuts. I mean, almost literally nuts. So the first contact I had with Al-Anon, the state I was in, I won't belabour it, but anxiety, depression, guilt, shame, just the usual laundry list of emotional states. I wasn't coping super well in a practical sense, shall we say. And I met a woman who was an Al-Anon member, and she was helping me with various things. And she said, I used to tell her, my mother wasn't an alcoholic, but she was, if I dare say so, an untreated Al-Anon. She had lots of, God rest her soul now, but she had lots of the behaviours, which I learnt from very assiduously. I didn't try to, I just picked them all up. And she was never happy, and it was always someone else's fault. And I was never happy, and it was always someone else's fault. And this woman that I met suggested, she said, have a look at this book. It was Courage to Change. And I started reading it. I started reading one a day per the calendar. I wasn't in Al-Anon, I wasn't going to Al-Anon meetings, but I thought this is useful. This is turning lights on. This is making sense of things which made no sense. I like this. And the alcoholics and addicts seem to be very busy with their addiction. They have a rock bottom. They're suddenly off to treatment and off to meetings. I met this woman, started reading Courage to Change in 1993. It was 1995 before I went to a meeting. So I took to it, but not quickly. So 1995 is the beginning of my Al-Anon story. And I'm embarrassed to say, in a sense, I'm work in progress. I've had a bit of a time recently. All self-created. I know that now. I know that when I'm going through something, I am doing it to me because there's a lesson for me to learn. God is allowing me to do it to me because there is a lesson for me to learn. I might come to the lessons of February. I'm glad it's March. And I don't want to talk about the alcoholics and the addicts. They've had enough time from me, frankly. They've had enough of my mental energy. Not interested. Let it be, that little sign over there, let it begin with me. Let it end with me as well. Let it begin with me. What I was like when I got to Al-Anon, I did not know how to look after myself in any material way. I remember walking across the room I lived in. This was a little while before I got to Al-Anon. I walked across a room I was living in, and it was piled with stuff on the floor, and I thought at some point I really ought to start putting things away. Once every 6 weeks, I'd have a clear up. Things would come off the floor, go into the cupboards, and then they'd gradually build up on the floor, and I'd have to navigate between piles of things because apparently I was busy with something. I don't know what I was busy with, but looking after myself was not it. And if something was wrong in my life, it was never my fault. If I couldn't blame anyone else, I would blame capitalism or something. Heaven forbid I should do something. Heaven forbid I should lift a finger. So nothing was my fault, and I didn't know where to begin. I don't know what I ate for years. I'm guessing I ate. I remember some kiwi fruit. I remember some kebabs. And I remember a Madhur Jaffrey phase. But apart from what I ate during the day, I have no recollection. I didn't know exercise was even a thing. I didn't consider it that something that people did. I had no beginning of looking after myself. But I was very busy with other people. If only I can get them to behave the way I want them to behave, I'll be okay. And if someone else did something wrong, that was my fault. It was never what I did, it was what they did. And then there was the looking after. There's nothing more endearing than someone with profound unsolvable problems who no one else seems to care about. Now, if no one else seems to care about them, this is known as a red flag. They do care about them, but they recognise there is nothing they can do. If I'm the only one, if I'm the cavalry riding over the brow of the hill to rescue the person that appears to have been abandoned by everyone else, that's the red flag. There is a reason why they're on their own. And I won't suddenly be able to fix the person that they've driven everyone else away. But I never saw that. A friend of mine says, don't get your help all over people. Help is the sunny side of control. And so there's, on one hand, control and guilt. On the other hand, the mothering, and with that comes the infantilization of the alcoholic or the addict or the crazy person or the whatever. They can't help. I remember I had a live one next to me. We're at dinner. His family were in town. The sister and the brother-in-law. We were out to dinner Friday night. Bad night to pick a meal out with a live one. Monday, they might be behaving themselves. Friday, no way. Anyway, bad choice, out. Friday evening, the live one is next to me. Alcohol, Valium, whatever else. And there's this bit where he starts to just tip forward very, very slowly. And you can tell that it's going to go straight down into the food. So I know what the drill is. You prop them back up. And I heard myself, I'd been an Al-Anon for like 15 years at this point. I heard myself say to them, he's only tired. He's had a long week. And as I was saying, I was thinking, I don't even believe that's true, because I was covering up for him. So excuse making, remaining in the game, because I'm so frightened that they will be disappointed with me if I say no, if I say good luck to you. And that's the flip side of the mothering. And we haven't even got to the crazy bit. The crazy bit, the really crazy bit, the bit that really takes the biscuit, is I would have this homing device for forming what are referred to as intimate relationships with alcoholics who are currently in full-blown addiction, thinking that this is the person that's going to rescue me. I wouldn't pick someone sane, stable, balanced, capable of helping in any way at all. I would pick the person that is not even capable of looking after themselves and want them to look after me. Then I'm surprised that they can't, and now everything is their fault. My life is their fault. And I've chosen them. Out of all the people I could have chosen, I got a live alcoholic, and that's who I'm having a relationship with, or a recovering alcoholic who is in AA and not doing the steps and is a little bit cranky a couple of times a week. And now everything is their fault. Very convenient, because I don't have to change. All I have to do is wait for him to change, and then I'll be all right. So I've experienced different elements of that overall condition at different times in my life. There have been times when I was very effective and efficient and in control and, running things across state lines, as a friend of mine says. There are other times I'm completely hopeless. And it's as though the whole kind of Al-Anon software was loaded into me at a very early age, and various modules get activated in different situations. But it's all preloaded somehow. I can see it in my family. How has Al-Anon helped? It's helped me understand. I'm just going to talk through the steps because it is the one thing that Al-Anon has given me that blows everything else out of the water. Everything else for me has supported that process of going through the steps. But no one in Al-Anon could fix me. No one person would be the saviour. I tried to put people on pedestals and think this one will do it. But I was the one that had to do the work. And where it started was step one, and recognising that once the alcoholic has started drinking again, they may or may not stop ever. And they are not in charge of whether or not they stop. Grace will pull them out of it, or providence or something. But whatever it is that pulls them out of it, it ain't them. They're out to sea. They can't stop themselves, so I can't stop them. I'm as powerless over them after the first drink as they are powerless over themselves after the first drink. Once something has clicked and they're off to have the first drink, they're powerless over that process. And I know it's not conference-approved literature in Al-Anon, but it helped me to read some of the literature of the other fellowship to understand their problem from the inside. They're powerless over whether or not they have the first drink. Without program, they're going to have the first drink. Once they've had the first drink, they're off to the races. If they're powerless over that, why would I have any power over it? They can't stop themselves, so I can't stop them. And if I've got one of those in my life, there is an unpredictable element. And anything can happen. They can bring anyone back. Who could do anything? Because they have very bad taste. Once they've had a drink. I mean, really, you lock the door. It's not necessarily going to stay locked. It's unbelievable what can happen when you got a live one. So my life is unmanageable if there are live alcoholics in my life. But it's worse than that. I was as powerless over my reactions to alcoholics, addicts, crazy people, the world, as they are over alcohol. It's like it's the same thing but a different object. I had no choice but to respond to life the way I was responding when I got to Al-Anon, because it was the only software that was loaded. And you got to use some software. You can't just sit in a room. You got to. I did not know any other way. And there's little bits of well-meaning advice when people would say, "I wouldn't worry about it. It might never happen." Or most of the things you worry about never happen. Or if you worry about things, that's not going to stop things from happening. It's not really going to help you plan in case they do happen. It doesn't pay down the pain if it does happen. All of these little bits of wisdom had no effect. Nothing had any effect. I seemed distressingly impervious to any sort of help when I was growing up and before I encountered Al-Anon. It took a systematic program to break the shell open. And it started with recognizing that I could do nothing about me. And in the same way that the alcoholic is powerless over their alcoholism and I am powerless over their alcoholism, other people are powerless over my Al-Anonism. It can only be broken from the inside with a decision. Enough is enough. My tolerance for pain was high, but it was not infinite. And at some point I thought, you know what, there must be a better way. And when I first started hearing the Al-Anon message, what got through to me was, funnily enough, not meetings. That I had a difficulty with. I'm so judgmental. I'd see people meetings and I look around the room and think, no, nothing anyone in here has to offer. That was what I was like. I'm not going to pretend I wasn't. I know you're very nice, all of you, and that you haven't had a judgmental thought in your life. But I was very judgmental. I'm using the past tense there. Make up your own mind. I'm better than I was. I'm not better, but I'm better than I was. But it was a tape. It was tapes. It was listening to people. And I would listen to these Al-Anon tapes, and suddenly I'd have room to breathe somehow. I'd feel less suffocated by my life. And step 2 is really a recognition that there is help available, and I'm not to judge what the origin ultimately of that help is. I don't need to crack theological questions to get step 2. That can be left. And what was advised was, once you have a relationship with a higher power, a functioning, working relationship with a higher power, then you might want to think about theological questions. Do you want a religion? Yes, no, which one? Tick the box. But you don't need to figure that out, they said, before you even consider step 2. Your house is on fire. Get out of the house. And when someone comes into the house and says, I know the way out of the house, you follow them out of the house. You don't audit their credentials. If they know the way out, follow them. And that's what I did. In step 3, I had to develop the recognition that someone said once, my head would kill me if it didn't need me for transportation. My head will kill me even though it needs me for transportation. And this is what it says in step 11. Step 3 plus step 11. Made a decision to turn my will and life over to God. It's not part of my life. It's the whole thing. What are the things that I can control? 3 things. What I believe, what I think, and what I do. If it's not one of those things, I can't control it. I have a little list that I read every morning. The things which are none of my business. Number 1, other people. Number 2, the world. Number 3, the past. Number 4, the future. Number 5, me. Number 6, my life. Number 7, the results. Now, when I keep my mind off those, as a friend of mine says, it frees up the whole day. You've suddenly got a whole load of extra time in your schedule. What are the 3 things I can pay attention to and do something about? What I believe, what I think, and what I do. But I don't even need to figure out any of those. If I'm turning those 3 areas, what I believe, turned over to God. What I think, turned over to God. What I do, turned over to God. I'm so free. I'm so off the hook. So everything is either none of my business or is turned over to God in step 11 for direction. And my step 11 is embarrassingly basic. It's simply, hello, God. You're still there. It's me. I'm still here. Can you tell me what to do today? Thank you very much. And I write down what comes to me, and then I do it. And then the next day, I have a little review. What went well? What went badly? I don't even need to figure out what went well and what bad. I say, God, can you show me what went well, what went badly, what I need to do differently? Okay. And I sit there, I wait. I see what comes and I write things down. And either they're right or they're not. It doesn't matter. If it comes, it gets written down. If it turns out it's wrong, I'll know. I'll be told. And that is it. And now a little voice in me says, well, shouldn't you be more responsible for all sorts of things going on? Shouldn't you be playing a more active part in the world? I play a very active part in the world, thank you very much. But I play an active part in the things which are my business, inside the hula hoop. And things about the world more generally in society and politics and ideology, oh God, ideologies, save me from those. All of those, well, maybe that's for someone else. But an AA member said to me that his attitude to alcohol, that he said drinking is a privilege. I abused it, so the privilege has been withdrawn. And I'm capable of such aggressive preoccupation and obsession with what goes on around me and what goes on in the world and the news and ideologies and politics and the environment, all of that stuff. I've so abused that privilege, I think it's been taken away. Occasionally I try and dip my toe back into it and the water is scalding. I can't do it. So I mind my own business. And now, here's the test. With keeping my life very small, I got an occupation. I'm married. We have a little home together. What else? I go to meetings. I sponsor people. I do some service. I've got a couple of interests. Now, I say to God on a daily basis, what do you want me to do? And I get a list of things to do. That list has never got down to zero. So I figure there is enough to do there. I don't need to worry about anything which is not given to me directly. And if I should ever one day run out of things to do, I can go to God and say, what do you want me to do? And if God says, get involved in the outside world, I'll do it. But that message has never come down the tubes. And this business of detachment, I know there are lots and lots of Al-Anon books, and lots of people have contributed in a fine way to these group efforts. And when you read them, you know they're group efforts. You can tell there are lots of different voices, lots of different approaches. And I like things which are simple and consistent and clear. My brain doesn't process variety very easily. That's just the way I'm built. I've learned to accept the way I'm built. And I like one day at a time in Al-Anon, because I understand it was compiled by one person who was touring around America, going to lots of different meetings, made lots of different observations, but there's a very consistent voice running all the way through it. And I thought, that'll do me. When I said to myself many years ago, Tim, if you ever get the hang of everything in that book and it's all committed to memory, then get another one. And I haven't cracked it yet. So I'm going to stick with that one. And it works very well for me. I read one of the readings every day, and we post it on the little WhatsApp group, and then people come in and share on that. It's very nice. And there was something the other day about detachment, and it's one of those sort of mystery words like ecumenical, where you kind of know what the word means, but if you were forced to define it, you'd struggle. And detachment is like that. If someone puts you on the spot, what's detachment? Or codependency, which I know is not an Al-Anon word, but it's the same thing. You sort of have a vague feel for what it means, but you don't want to be put on the spot. But detachment, there was a reading a couple of days ago, which I thought was splendid. And it essentially, from ODAT, and it essentially said, to detach from something boils down to you stop thinking about it and you stop trying to interfere. Whatever the situation is, stop interfering. And to cover those two things, just before I do that, one point about my opening position, which is when I came to Al-Anon, I didn't feel responsible for me. I didn't act responsibly for myself, but I felt responsible for other people, and I acted like I was in charge of their lives. I wouldn't let them take responsibility for themselves, either in action or in terms of accountability, and I made them responsible for me. All of those responsibilities were everything was upside down. I remember the time someone said to me, I said, I don't know where the boundary is between me and other people. And she sat me down. She said, do you have a pen and a piece of paper? I said, yes. She said, write this down, it might help. And I thought it was going to be some great long treatise. And what she said was, you are 100% responsible for what you believe, what you think, what you do, what you feel, your life, your internal world and your external world. And I'm 100% responsible for mine. Does that make sense? Just nod slowly if you understand, she said. I said, okay, that makes sense. And suddenly the mystery was solved. I'm responsible for me, you're responsible for you. That is the end of it. And if I remember that, I have a good day. But on those 2 points, what detachment involves, to stop thinking about it. And I was given this idea a long time ago, and it's very helpful. And it's a little story, if you'll indulge the story. A man is sent to see a rabbi who is an expert, apparently, on the question of how to handle intrusive thoughts. Bloke shows up, knocks on the door, looks through the window. You can see the rabbi sitting there, studying at his desk, ignores him. About 2 hours later, someone is sent to open the door. He goes in and is given wonderful hospitality. Eventually, he plucks up the courage to ask the question. Look, I've been sent to you many hundreds of miles. Apparently you're an expert on this question of intrusive thoughts. I have trouble with intrusive thoughts. There's nothing I can do about them. Do you have any, can you say something about that? I was hoping you could give me a lesson. He said, you've already had the lesson. Just because someone knocks on the door doesn't mean you have to let them in. And so the thought, I'm not responsible for the thought that occurs to me. I'm responsible for whether I open the door, let it in, give it a cup of tea and a slice of Battenberg cake, let it move in, let it run around, let it make its dinner. I have to be the gatekeeper of my mind. And the first 5 seconds are golden. When the thought comes in of worry or fretting or anxiety or irritation or anger or grievance or jealousy or envy or rage or whatever it is, planning, I've discovered, is actually rage. It's rage, it's organised rage. I've got to be very careful with planning as well, because I can overplan. When the thought comes in, say, nope, off with you. Not to engage with it, not to argue with it, not to plead with it, not to examine it substantively, not try to get the thought to see the error of its ways, not to teach the thought a lesson. If you fight the devil on the devil's territory, the devil always wins. And all it wants me to do is think about it. If I'm engaging with it on any level, it's already won. So the answer is, nope, off with you. And then it comes back, off with you. And what I then do is bring my attention back to right here, what now? What is on my list of things to do today? That is the thing that I have to do. I can't fight the thought, but I can redirect my attention. And I said, I can't do that, it's impossible. He said, I want you to imagine the Eiffel Tower. Now imagine an elephant under the Eiffel Tower dancing, wearing a pink tutu. He said, are you imagining that? I said, yes, I've got a picture in my mind now of an elephant dancing under the Eiffel Tower wearing a pink tutu. He said, you've just proved you can redirect your attention towards something else and think of something you weren't thinking about before. Your excuses are now over. Now, you may have to redirect your attention, he said, again and again and again and again and again. But eventually you'll teach your mind who's boss. You're boss. You're in charge. It's not in charge. It's been running amok for years. And that has to change. And it has to start now. That's on the thinking side. And on the behaviour side, what I've learned to do is to let situations play out. Let it break around you is just so delicious. And it does. And I'm going to finish on this. I had a live alcoholic a few years ago, a very, very close friend. And we decided to let it play out because nothing we could do was going to help the situation. And someone said to me, if you carry on interfering, he's going to die. If you let go, he still might die, but he'll die with you and him at peace. And he died, and we were at peace with each other when he died of his alcoholism in his early 50s. And I'm at peace with that situation now. Thanks for listening.